Hello, this is Mr. Stegman, and today we're going to be talking about found poetry. Found poetry is a great way to get started writing poetry because the words are already there for you. It helps you identify which words are the most important words to use and can kind of help you see the basic structure of poems. How this works is you take a piece from a body of text, such as a book or a short story. Could even be something you've written yourself, and you take just the most important words from that and create a poem from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one that has already been written by somebody else, walk you through how they did it, show you one that I've written and kind of have you help me write one, and then you are going to write one yourself. So this is a section from the book Holes, and I'll read it for you. It says, "There was a change in the weather for the worse. The air became unbearably humid. Stanley was drenched in sweat. Beads of moisture ran down the handle of his shovel. It was almost as if the temperature had gotten so hot that the air itself was sweating. A loud book of thunder echoed across the empty lake. A storm was way off to the west, beyond the mountains. Stanley could count more than 30 seconds between the flash of lightning and the clap of thunder. That was how far away the storm was. Sound travels a great distance across a barren wasteland." Now, what we're going to do with this is we're going to take this particular section and we're going to highlight some areas that are probably the most important. I'm going to highlight the areas that the author of this last poem highlighted, just to kind of show you what they thought was the most important sections. So, let's see. There was a change. I'm going to probably eliminate the weather just to kind of keep it a little bit more ambiguous, or make it so the reader doesn't completely know what we're talking about. This line right here, "for the worse," is a really good line. It's descriptive and it kind of adds a little drama. The air became. I'll leave off unbearably and just keep humid on there. Now we want to avoid names of people like Stanley because that makes it so it's a little bit more specific to this particular novel. We're trying to write a poem from this. So we want to leave off words like Stanley. And maybe Stanley was drenched in sweat. We'll leave that completely off. But we're going to keep "beads of moisture ran down the handle of his shovel." That's extremely descriptive, and I think that would sound really great in a poem. We're almost going to keep this. We're also going to keep here. "It was almost as if," and then we're going to keep "the air itself was sweating," because that sounds very poetic. It was almost as if the air itself was sweating. And we're going to get rid of "the temperature had gotten so hot," because that's a little bit more specific to this and maybe doesn't sound as poetic as some of the other stuff does. I'm going to read on. "A loud book of thunder echoed across the empty lake." I think we're just going to keep "thunder echoed across the empty lake." And then "a storm was way off to the west." I think we're just going to keep "just beyond the mountains" right there. That one sounds pretty poetic. "A storm beyond the mountains." And of course, we want to keep off Stanley again. But we'll keep this area over here 30 seconds between the flash of lightning and the clap of thunder. And then this other line here, "that was how far away the storm was." That's not very descriptive. It just kind of tells you what's happening in the story, and that's not necessary for a poem. But this last line here sounds really great. "Sound travels a great distance across a barren wasteland." It's very dramatic, and it sounds like it'll fit really well into a poem. So I'm going to show you the poem that the author of this particular poem wrote from this. And you can see they arranged it as such. "There was a change for the worst. The air became humid. Beads of moisture ran down the handle of his shovel. It was almost as if the air itself was sweating. Thunder echoed across the empty lake. A storm beyond the mountains. 30 seconds between the flash and the thunder. Sound travels a great distance across a barren wasteland." You can see that the author of this poem created some drama by isolating "for the worse," isolating "and the thunder," and then isolating "across a barren wasteland." This last one right here. Now, the neat thing you can do with a found poem like this is you can create another poem based off of the found poem and make it so it's something that's completely your own. So I'm going to show you what this one author has done with this. The author has taken... I'm going to be able to see that. The author has taken their poem, and they have created another one that had to do with a different subject. So you can see here the similarities. There was a change. For the team, the crowd grew restless. Beads of moisture pooled in the corner of his eyes. It was almost the same as the time he blew the touchdown. Thunder grew in the crowded stands. Anger building on the sidelines. 30 seconds on the game clock. And he kicked. Sound exploded as the ball flew across the end zone and through the uprights. So you can see that they have a very similar structure. Some similar things that we see here are there was a change. That's the exact line. The air became, the crowd grew. Beads of moisture is the same. It was almost is borrowed from this poem. Thunder grew, thunder echoed. 30 seconds, they even took that. 30 seconds. And you can see how you can take this poem over here that's about Stanley in the desert, shoveling and being very warm, and making a poem about football based off of that. So I'm going to show you an area, or another section from a different book. And this is one that I've created myself. This is from the book A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. And I'll read the section from you. The face that stared intently to mine was not a bird's face. No cage prevented this creature from leaping out at me, and the creature appeared not only poised to leap at me, but eager to do so. Its expression was fierce. Its snout, as narrow as the nose of a fox, was pointed at my face. Its wild, bright eyes winked with hatred and fearlessness, and the claws of its forepaws, which were reaching toward me, were long and prehistoric. It looked like a weasel in a shell, like a ferret with scales. So, right now, the video is going to pause, and I would like you to identify what are some of the most important lines from this particular poem. Welcome back. So here are some of the lines that I felt were the most important from this particular section of text. I really liked the face that stared intently. I thought that was very descriptive. I liked not a bird's face. I thought that sounded pretty neat. I also liked no cage prevented this creature. I actually took out the creature and I like leaping out at me. And I actually even took out just the leaping out just so it was just leaping. I liked the line, the creature, repeating that again. And I also liked the line, eager to do so. I liked its expression was fierce. And I also liked its snout. And I write narrow as the nose of a fox. I also really liked this descriptive area here. Wild, bright eyes winked with hatred and fearlessness. And I liked claws. Long and prehistoric. And I finally liked like a weasel in a shell, like a ferret with scales. Now you can see I took a lot of information from this particular body of text. And I'll show you how I chose to arrange it. You can see my poem here, taken directly from John Irving's book. Take the words that are taken from it, but you can see that it changes the meaning a little bit when it's put into a poetry form. So I thought that I really liked the line, the face stared intently. I wanted to isolate that and make that stand out a little bit. Not a bird's face, to kind of show that we're not looking at a bird. I also liked separating that no cage prevented leaping. I took out some words such as the creature from leaping, and just left it as no cage prevented leaping because I thought that was kind of poetic. I thought it was a little bit mysterious, and I really liked that. Then I'm adding the word the creature, eager to do so. I liked the line, its expression was fierce. I felt that that was really descriptive, and I thought that that should be kind of on its own. Its snout. The reason I wanted to isolate that is because I wanted the reader to pause right there and just kind of think about its snout, and then show you a description of that snout, narrow as a fox. I kept this whole other line here, wild, bright eyes, winked with hatred and fearlessness, because I thought that that was very descriptive, and I thought that that should kind of still stay together. Claws, long and prehistoric, I felt should kind of be on its own as well too, because those are very descriptive and kind of show you what we're talking about. And I thought breaking this last line up into two different lines, I felt also made the reader pause and read it separately, like a weasel in a shell, a ferret with scales. Now I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to write a poem based off of this particular poem that I've written here. Welcome back. So you can see this is the poem that I've written based off of the poem that I took from John Irving. And you'll see some things that I took that were very similar, such as the face stared. The face stared. However, I changed intently to curiously. Not I kept that as well. Not a bird's face. I changed it to not a serious face. I kept the face there as well. And I still kept the no cage, but I changed it to no barriers prevented. Just to kind of change the words up a little bit. So that's something you could even use a thesaurus for. Changing cage, looking up cage and seeing what are some other words for cage. And barrier may have been one of those. Instead of the creature, I'm not talking about the creature. I'm talking about a different person. I'm talking about he. And so I changed the creature to he. I kept the word eager because I thought that was a very descriptive word. But instead of eager to leap at me, I chose eager to meet her. I kept the concept of the expression was fierce. However, I changed it a little bit to say instead of saying expression, I changed it to smile. I kept the word was, but I changed fierce to joyous. I also changed its snout to its teeth. So instead of the snout of the creature, it is now the teeth of the person we're talking about. And I described the teeth, just as they're describing the snout here, narrow as a fox. I'm describing the teeth as straight as subway tile. Then I have over here, I have a very similar description. Wild, bright eyes winked with hatred and fearlessness. I changed it to white, bright, shining with confidence and cleanliness. Then I also changed claws, long and prehistoric, to describing the person's eyes, which were focused and old. I used two different descriptions. They have long and prehistoric. I chose focused and old. Like a weasel in the shell, I used that simile and created my own, like a coalescence of family lines. And then finally ended with just a verb, with a noun. A ferret with scales, a continuation of experience, keeping that very similar structure. So you'll see on your screen here that you have an excerpt from the story The Outsiders. And I'm going to make it so it's full screen here. And you'll actually have a copy of this also that I've given you so you can write your own piece of found poetry. So what I want you to do is, as you're reading this, I want you to highlight the things that are highlight or underline the things that are the most important. And then create a poem based off of that. And then after that, write your own poem based off of the poem that you had already written from The Outsiders. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask myself, or if Miss Miller is in the room, ask her as well. Thank you very much.